This is Devanshi. I'm the fundraising coordinator at CYBN.
All right, so today we're going to be talking to you about opportunities in biodiversity, and this is episode number 5. Devanshi and I will be speaking about our experience working at the Toronto Zoo.
So the program that we worked for was AdoptAPond, and they mainly focus on conservation, restoration, research, and outreach in wetland habitats. So they're operating in Scarborough and Pickering regions, and they just do their research there on reptiles and amphibians.
Yeah, so the program is really great and is pretty much youth-led. I think there was there even somebody over 35? Maybe one person.
Yeah.
Most people,
supervisors.
Yeah, and it was really independent, a really independent program, and gave us a lot of experience. So now we're gonna kind of speak a little bit more about how we got involved individually, okay. So I got the funding opportunity through a program known as the Youth Employment Readiness Program, which was through Durham. So it included like Ajax, Pickering. There was somebody in Scarborough who also was able to do this program. And what happened was everybody got, I think, $6,000 as kind of seed funding to go and find a job, and then your employer would match the money, and then you would be able to kind of get a short-term job or an internship in different areas. So I ended up doing mine at the Toronto Zoo for the AdoptAPond program, and it was really good experience. So kind of like Devanshi said, it's a conservation program. So zoos are big conservation hubs, which a lot of the time the public doesn't really know. So in that way, it was really interesting, focusing on like this outreach and research portion, which is a huge part of the project. So what I, in particular, am going to talk about today is a few things that I was able to do at the Toronto Zoo. So I was able to do radio tracking for turtles. So the AdoptAPond program focuses on herptiles, and with a specific focus on Blanding's turtles, which are an endangered species in Ontario. Actually, all of our turtles, unfortunately, have made the list now. But so what the AdoptAPond program does is it head starts these turtles. So we take eggs from disturbed nests, and they get incubated, raised at the zoo until they are big enough to have a better chance in the wild, and then they're reintroduced. So some of these turtles are then tracked throughout the years in order to understand how they are moving within a Rouge Park. So yeah, so we got to learn how to use radio trackers. So we got to learn how to use 2 different kinds of tracking machines, and so the beeps take you everywhere. So we're like waist deep in marsh. There are mosquitoes sometimes, it's hot and everything, but it's beautiful and it's a lot of fun to actually get to see and interact with these cute turtles in the wild. We were also able to insert transmitters into the turtles. So one of the girls who we were working with was doing her master's thesis, which focused on road surveys. Devanshi's going to talk a little bit more about what those are. But for her project, or as part of her project, we were inserting transmitters into turtles. So we actually we were trained by the Toronto Zoo to use like a syringe and to be able to put these, like, they're like this small, very small for smaller turtles, and there are bigger ones for like snapping turtles. So,
yeah.
So we were able to put the transmitters into the turtles, and then later on, if they passed a certain sensor, we'd be able to track their movement. While doing this, trapping the turtles, so we would set up several different types of traps in the Rouge. So like basking traps where they'd go and they'd be like, oh, this is a lovely log. And they'd go, and they'd sit on the log. And then when they try to get off, there's a net underneath the area so they're not able to escape. So that was one way we would catch them. But the most successful way was by using the hoop traps. So you'd put sardines, so it's a little bit stinky sometimes and it leaks in your fuel bag and all that good stuff. So you put the sardines into the hoop trap and then or cat food.
Yeah,
cat food is another one. We tried multiple methods. And then we would go and retrieve the turtles. We would notch them as well as put in the pit tag. We would record their weight and how large they are. And depending on the type of turtle, we had to learn how to deal with them differently, right? The snappers were not very happy to be handled.
No.
He definitely did try to bite us. So it was just like learning about how to handle the animals, as well as because we are in a public area, sometimes you would have to interact with the public. People are curious as to what exactly we're doing, like why are we doing this? Why are we touching turtles?
Are we hurting turtles? Or
right.
Are we catching turtles and eating them?
Yeah, or are we trafficking turtles? Because that's a really big issue. So all of the areas that we were in, like it's not public knowledge of where our traps are and exactly where we are serving for the turtles, just because there is turtle trafficking that does happen, especially with landings. So we were trying to avoid that. Another project that I was a part of was the nest monitoring. So turtles start nesting in, well, I guess late May, early June, and it continues on into later in the season. So my partner and I would go out in the evenings and we would search for nesting turtles. So turtles like south-facing slopes, sandy gravel areas. So we were actually able to walk kilometers along streams and get paid for it. To birds and like finding turtles. It was definitely a super amazing job. And so this program has been going on for many years, so over 10 years. And there is this turtle, this older Blandings turtle called Clementine. And she had been missing from the study for 12 years. And we knew where her nesting site was. So my partner and I decided to just randomly check it one day. And she was actually getting off of her little island, and we like picked her up and started screaming because we knew who she was, because this was her beach. We were able to put the transmitter on her, and they still track her now after her 12 years long escapade. So this is just half of what we do, and Devanshi's going to talk about the rest of it. So we really got a huge amount of diverse experience working outside in all weather conditions in a very short period of time.
Yeah, so I will start off with how I got into this position, and which was nothing as fancy as Fallon, but I was a master's student at that time and we had an internship component. So I just applied to this position, this internship position at Toronto Zoo. And I interviewed and I got picked to work with the team. And it was amazing because there were like 7 or 8 young people like us working for all the projects, and all of us worked on 6 different projects during the summer. So I probably got the most exposure from this internship. So I'm going to talk about 3 projects that we all did. Fallon also did, but yeah. So one of that was road surveys. We had 3 different transects on 3 different roads, mapped and marked, and we would have to walk them daily with our safety vests and helmets and a GPS. So that's the equipment that we were carrying. And we would just note all the mortalities, so all the dead animals that we could find, toads, sometimes skunks, raccoons, skinks, salamanders, whatever we could find. So we would keep an eye out on the roads and just map it with GPS and then note it down on our data sheet. and make a record just so that we know that where like the hotspots of wildlife mortality were. And we were planning to submit it to TRCA and people who sort of insert the culverts and the bridges so that these hotspots can be used and to put the bridges and save the animals while they're crossing the road. So there was one thing. The other thing was snake surveys. So we had around 30 to 50 cover boards placed in a habitat. Cover boards are nothing but just wooden planks spread out in a habitat, and they attract snakes because the conditions under the cover board are moist and dark, and that's where snakes like to hide during the day. So we had 30 of them marked and they were spaced out, and we would just go survey them once a week. So surveying was just lifting the cover board and checking if there was a snake underneath or not. We were specially targeting milk snakes, eastern milk snakes. They are special concern species and they are beautiful gray snakes with red blotches on them. And their habitat is greatly affected by urbanization in general, by industrial developments in the area or residential developments. So they were of concern, and when we would get them, we would have something called a pig tag reader. So we would run it through the snake and check if they were tagged already or not. If not, if they were new ones, we would put a small incision and put a pig tag in them so that we know that they are a part of the study, that tag wouldn't affect their life cycle or their health in any way. So that's what we did, and that was just to get an estimate of the population of milk snakes in that area. And we would also come across different, like other species of snakes, and we wouldn't tag them, but we would definitely make a note to see that they're there. And the other thing that we did was frog logging. So we had small recorders called frog loggers placed in wetland habitats, especially. That would just be operated by huge batteries and a memory stick. So they would keep on recording frog calls and other calls day in and day out. So we would check them once a week, remove the memory stick, put a new one, and then upload all the data on our computers to analyze. All the frogs have very distinct calls, so we could see what sort of frogs and toads are present in the whole area. And it was a fun exercise. The data analysis was a little lengthy and yeah, it took a couple of hours, but other than that, it was a fun exercise. It's a great way to sort of see species or study species indirectly, right? So that's what we did. Of course, you all can participate in citizen science projects, and I'm sure you must have heard about iNaturalist, but AdoptAPond has two different apps that they run as well. They are called Frogwatch and Ontario Turtle Tally. You could download them and literally photograph whatever snakes and frogs and turtles that you see around, and make a note of that on their app and help them collect the data.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Rouge Park. So AdoptAPond focuses on the Rouge Park area. So Rouge Park is the largest urban park in North America, and a lot of the land is actually restored and reclaimed. So it's either was farmland at one time or was a garbage dump, which is really interesting. So it just goes to show you that although there has been a lot of development happening and more development continues to happen, we can still reclaim the land afterwards and turn it and transform it into habitat for these animals. So with this this Head Start program that is being done with the Blandings turtles, right? We're releasing them back into the park, into an area which is their native habitat, but was previously disturbed, introducing species to where they used to live. So it just goes to show you the real potential that still exists in our system, regardless of previous land use. I know, like Devanshi, you've seen some indications.
Yeah. Fun fact, the wetlands that we were majorly working on were a reclaimed dumping site. And they were like, so all the dirt was removed, and they did some landscaping, put some plastic sheets around in the wetlands just so that water would be retained. And then it just turned out to be an awesome habitat for the turtles. And this is like a conservation success story right there, right in our own backyards in Toronto.
Yeah, and it's a really huge area, and it has very diverse species in it. But in this reclaimed area, you can also kind of see the hold of invasives. So we weren't just learning about native species and native turtles. We were also learning about invasive species in wetlands, and like phragmites and yellow iris that don't really belong in this area. But we were able to kind of better understand what kind of habitat they target and how aggressive they are at invaders. So now I guess we'll talk a little bit about what we've learned through this experience. So Devanshi, do you want to?
Yeah, firstly, surviving in that hot and humid weather and thunderstorms and etc., while working in a pair of waders, and waders are non-breathable, so it can get really hot. So firstly, just that sheer resilience that we developed by working outdoors for the summer. But it was amazing. The team was great. We made some good friends, and we are still in touch, like Fallon and I. And other than that, we learned a lot about the species. So as Fallon was saying, that we learned how to identify natives and invasives. So I think I personally learned about over 80 native plants in that area, and I recorded each of them. I have my iNaturalist account, so I put it out there just so that I can record that this is what I saw. We also saw a lot of birds in that area. So yeah, like I did a fair share of birding, learned about some species of birds, a lot about life cycle of turtles and the things that impact their habitats and their life cycles in general. A lot of nests get destroyed even by people. So sometimes turtles just lay their eggs around a trail, and people just casually step on that. Or a dog or a fox can just raid the nest and destroy the eggs, which is so sad. Like, it makes you really sad. And just the species of reptiles and amphibians and mammals that we came across. That's what I learned.
Mm-hmm. And then going back a little bit about what Devanshi said about nesting. So the mortality rate in turtles is huge. So something like 1 out of 100 eggs actually reaches maturity, and it's even less than that in urban environments. So because Bruges is an urban park, there are a lot of raccoons. So when I was doing nesting surveys, you would see a turtle laying its nest one day, and the next day you'd be like, no, a raccoon ate it. But some stayed raccoons for the season. So we saw baby turtles all the time. It's just something to definitely keep in mind of. So it's an additional challenge that turtles have to face in urban areas, is this extra level of predation.
Yeah, and something. Oh, sorry.
I don't know. It's okay.
Okay, something I just want to add on the nesting part. Like, if you come across a turtle nest and if you report it, there are ways to save the nest. So there are some specific coverings that we can put on the nest just to protect it from predators. So if you put that on the apps that we talked about, the Turtle Tally app, maybe authorities can connect with you and provide you with that shelter to protect the nest.
Great. I think a valuable thing that I learned was about the prevalence of ticks, of the deer ticks that carry Lyme disease. So it was something that I wasn't very aware of before I started working at the zoo. But in training and everything, it was like of the utmost importance that we understood that these ticks are around and that they are there in significant numbers. So whenever we were working in the field, we would always try to be as covered as possible and make sure that when we come home, we do it. So immediately when you come home, you take off your field clothes and you do a full body tick check. So people had been bitten like my very first day.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh gosh, great. But she found it and was able to like report it and get it checked out. And there was no Lyme disease associated with the tick. But as climate change happens and these ticks are able to continue to overwinter in Ontario in areas where they haven't before, it's another thing that we need to be aware of as citizens and as conservationists, right? Because this is a public health issue also. So that's something that I learned with is this extra job and like kind of like advocacy that conservationists have a responsibility for. What else did I learn? I really did not know too much in particular about herpetiles, about like amphibians and reptiles, but I'd always loved frogs and turtles. They were always great. But just coming into this team that was so knowledgeable. So there were people who had been doing turtle work for a very long time, and the training was exceptional. Everyone was really patient, and especially with things like pit tagging, where you are using a syringe, they really made sure that you were comfortable with it and were very encouraging when you did do it. And sometimes things can go not the way that you plan, and you have to be able to adapt to them. And everybody, I thought, was very supportive, of that. On our team, we also had several Indigenous members, which was great. They were part of the Turtle Island Conservation Program, which was affiliated with ours, and it was a really great experience just being able to have, again, this focus on diversity, this diverse team with diverse backgrounds. Like not everybody had a background in conservation or biology, which I thought was really interesting. People came from different walks of life, but at the core, everybody had an interest in biology and in turtles and in conservation, which I think is something that's really hard to find. It's a hard opportunity to find nowadays in this really competitive job market, to actually be able to get an internship or into an area that you don't necessarily have a lot of experience in. And AdoptAPond really did provide that. And now we have this foundation of this intensive field work that we can build upon and diversify into many different things. Because we weren't just learning about turtles or snakes or frogs. We were learning about the whole biota, the whole system, about the different plants, again, about invasives and just whole system level. Another thing was I was also able to do some volunteering with the bat team, which was fun. So they work primarily at night, obviously, I guess, doing field work. And I was able to learn how to set up some mist netting. So to actually be able to catch the bats and observe them. But in order to do that, we had to make sure that we had our rabies shots and everything like that. So again, at the zoo, safety was always first, which was important for the system that we were working in.
Yeah, and also collecting data with a purpose. So we would love to sort of talk about how amazing our leaders were, or like the people who guided us during the internship were, because we exactly knew what data we were collecting and for what purpose, which is very important, because rather than just going out and collecting any and every data in the field, like we were purpose driven, we had an idea of what we were doing and what we were working towards.
Yeah, so the team was definitely really amazing. So does anybody have any questions? If you do, feel free to just type it into the chat and then we'll try to address them here. So yeah, another thing to touch on, like Devanshi said, it was her master's internship. Another person on our team was also doing their master's with Nick Mandrake from the University of Toronto. So if you are interested in turtles, you can definitely try and reach out to various professors and AdoptAPond. AdoptAPond is always looking for people.
Yes.
Yeah. It's conservation based. It's all, everything's dependent on funding, right? How many jobs are available is dependent on the amount of funding that they can get. So for me, I came with my own funding. So they were like, woo!
And that's the best for them. Yeah.
Right. So if you do have an opportunity or you do have access to any sort of funding, and you are interested in turtles, AdoptAPond was definitely interested in having you, as I'm sure are a lot of other not-for-profit organizations. So if you ever do have the ability to get a little bit of funding of your own, then definitely reach out to these organizations, because they're all funding based. They're all looking for money, and they're looking for the manpower, right?
Yeah.
And like we know as conservationists that there's so much work to do, right? It's all about having that money there behind you to be able to do it.
That's absolutely correct.
Another thing about the zoo is we had to drive our own vehicles. So the zoo didn't give us vehicles to go to the site, but we were paid for a gas.
And
wear and tear.
I guess gas.
I think it was like a comment. It was like some sort of calculation.
Yeah, but to be honest, like the field sites were super close by. We did not have to drive a lot, just like maybe a kilometer away or so.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think that working for AdoptAPond also kind of opened doors within the zoo, so you were able to meet other areas or other groups, other focuses within the zoo, which I thought was really amazing. I was there for a short period of time because I ended up going abroad afterwards, but I know Devanshi, you were there.
Yeah, I would like to add that it also literally opened the doors for the zoo, in the sense like I would literally walk in and walk out of the zoo every single time. I would have my lunch with polar bears, and it was awesome.
It's definitely a very cool experience. It was just really cool that it was youth-led too.
Yeah.
And the fact that we would divide into teams. So usually teams of 2.
Yeah.
And we'd split up because we had a lot to do, a lot of area to cover. So when we said that we were doing like radio tracking and trapping and
like 6 projects all together. Yeah.
These are all happening at the same time. Like all of this needs to be done in 1 week. Some of these things need to be done every single day.
Multiple times a week. Yeah.
And whatever it was, blaring heat, downpours, did not matter. Which is definitely a good part of an interesting part of the job, as well as, like we mentioned, that community outreach portion. So I wasn't able to participate, but I know that they had events.
I did. I participated in some of the events, and we would actually talk about the importance of native species in a habitat, and turtles, and where they lay eggs, and just the whole life cycle in general. So we would go to Rouge Beach or certain libraries and find out different audiences all the time and talk about the importance of conservation.
Awesome. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. We just like to say...
we'd like to wish a happy UN International Youth Day.
Yeah, so it's a good day to do this talk. Yes, youth, we can do it. We're having impact and everything already. Devanshi, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think I am okay.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening today. We hope that this helped out and kind of gave you an idea of some of the opportunities or paths into different opportunities. If you have any questions, feel free to message us on Facebook or Instagram or email us.
For sure. We would gladly answer all your queries.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening today. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful
Bye.
youth day. Bye.